Hi, everyone. I'm just going to go through a quick presentation slides, and then I'll introduce the speakers for our session this evening, and then I'll hand it over to them. All right. Welcome to today's session, everyone. My name is Trinity, and I am a member of PreMedCC, which is a student-led organization that was founded in fall of 2021. Our goal as an organization was to create an online program for pre-medical students at community colleges and universities with the hope of guiding the next generation of diverse and inclusive physicians. We know how challenging finding mentorship can be, especially in the middle of a pandemic. And while we advertise our organization as being for community college students, our events are open to anyone. We realize that finding mentorship and guidance in a pre-med journey can be especially challenging for first-generation students, people that lack financial resources, and just those that do not know the medical field. One of the best parts about our events is that they are virtual, so you can join us from the comfort of your own home or wherever you are. Typically, our events are Fridays from 5 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and also occasionally on Saturdays. However, if you're not able to join us at that time, most of our sessions are recorded and then can be accessed through our YouTube channel later on. After you have attended our sessions, be sure to take the quiz. And if you receive a grade of 70% or higher on the quiz, you'll be getting credit for the hours that you've put in the session tonight. And if you'd like to stay connected with us and know about our upcoming sessions, please follow us on social media. PreMedCC is our username on all of these platforms, and you can find all the information about our events and our organization there. Now I'll just run through a short introduction for our speakers. So hello, everyone, and welcome again, and welcome to our workshop of how to interact with your professors at community college and university. Our speakers this evening for the workshop are Nancy Galindo and Cassidy, and as well, they are joined by some of their students. Nancy was a first-generation college student and felt fortunate to have had guidance throughout her academic journey. She is committed to paying it forward and is dedicated to helping students navigate the higher education system. She previously worked for City Colleges of Chicago and assisted students through their academic journey. She is currently serves as the Undergraduate Initiatives Program Coordinator at UC Davis School of Medicine. Cassidy is a proud community college graduate and transfer student. She has an associate's degree and bachelor's degree in sociology from Sacramento City College and UC Davis. She is currently the UC Postbaccalaureate Consortium Coordinator and serves the 4 UC programs, which include Davis, Irvine, Los Angeles, and San Francisco. She has a passion for working with students from disadvantaged backgrounds and values the role of mentorship. So welcome to our speakers, and thank you everyone for joining us tonight.
Can I get permission to share, please? Hello, everyone, and welcome to our talk.
You should be able to.
It says host disabled, participant screen sharing.
Oh, hang on, sorry.
All right. Thank you so much for being here with us today. As Dr. Marco Angulo said on this platform not that long ago, you could have chosen to be anywhere, but you are here with us to talk about this very little talked topic, and that is how to interact with your professor. I am joined by some wonderful people, and I'm going to go ahead and have them introduce themselves. We'll start with Cassidy.
Hi, everyone. I'm really happy to be here today. So I work alongside Nancy at the UC Davis School of Medicine Office of Student and Resident Diversity. And I'm especially happy to be talking to my fellow community college students and share about insight. So happy to be here today.
And then can we have our post-bac students introduce themselves, please? We can start with Jessica.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jessica. I graduated from Fresno State with my bachelor's degree in biology.
Mary?
Hi, everybody. So glad to be here today. My name is Mary, and I graduated with a BS in Biological Sciences from UC Santa Barbara.
Jose?
Hi everyone, my name is Jose. I attended Miramar College, Miramar Community College in San Diego, and then transferred to UCLA and got a degree in biophysics.
Chance?
Hi, everybody. Happy New Year. My name is Chance Bennett. I graduated from Santa Clara University, and then I ended up going back to community college after I graduated, and after that into a pathway program through community college and here to the postbac.
Roberto?
Hi everyone, my name is Roberto. I went to UC Berkeley for undergrad.
Ben?
Hello, everybody. My name is Benjamin. I was initially a transfer student from Long Beach City College, and then I transferred to Cal State Long Beach and earned my biology degree, and now I'm here as a postbac.
Diana?
Hi, everyone. My name is Diana. I went to Sac State and got my degree in biological sciences, and now I'm a postbac student.
Elizabeth?
Hi, everyone. I graduated from UC Irvine with a degree in biological sciences, and I am also currently a UC Davis postbac student.
Alejandra?
Hello, everyone. My name is Alejandra, and I graduated from UC Davis with a bachelor's of global disease biology and community nutrition, and I'm currently in the postbac program.
Chris?
How you guys doing? My name is Chris. I am a proud transfer student from community college, Glendora, Citrus College, and then I got my BS in microbiology at UC San Diego, and now I'm in the postbac program up here in Davis.
Ginger?
Hey everyone, my name is Cher. I graduated with a BS at UC Davis in neurobiology, and now I'm in the postbac program.
All right, thank you so much. And the way we decided to approach this talk is really, or the lens that we are using is through our shared experiences. For myself, my pre-UC Davis life, I spent about 9+ years in community college in different roles, and one of them included teaching college success class. And many of us on this panel are also first gen. As you heard, some of them are community colleges, community college transfer. And so we're just excited here to kind of share some bits of tips with you today. And so I'd like to begin by really what I hope would be like the staple of the pre-med journey, to embrace the pace of your own journey. Oftentimes we're led to believe that medical school timeline is you do A, B, and C, and then you become a doctor. But when in reality, there's different paths to get to your ultimate goal of being a physician. There are sometimes times where we have to take time off to deal with some personal issues, but eventually we get to our final destination. And I think really your interaction with your professor really starts at your syllabus, right? The syllabus is commonly also known as your contract with your professor. In this document, you will find what the expectations are, what your learning outcomes are, what will the grading rubric will be, things like text requirements, but also like information about your professor, as well as how to communicate with them if you are not going to be able to make it to class, whether it's a last minute thing or if it's something that you have planned. And so really that communication and how to communicate with your instructor will be listed on your syllabus. We are living in a pandemic, whereas you all know things shift quite quickly. This document typically will let you know if your class is meeting online at any point, or a plan B if a surge happens like we're going through now, what platform you would be using. It also confirms the dates and times of your class meetings. Sometimes we're in a rush and we register for classes. We may sign up for the wrong section accidentally, and so you want to make sure that the corresponding times match what you originally thought. And it also provides information about office hours. Again, we're in a pandemic, so they may feel more comfortable meeting virtually, or they may not like the virtual platform at all and decide to meet in person. So you want to check out those details prior to attending office hours. And so really, what are the benefits of speaking to your professor? I think that many of us are often have like fears or anxieties in talking to our professors, that we feel that we don't even know where to begin. But really, they are the experts in the discipline. They can potentially provide career ideas. Oftentimes we can think that a certain career like medicine has a straight path. You only take care of patients, but in speaking with your professors, you may actually find out that there's advocacy work that physicians get involved in. There's research work. There's academic medicine. Maybe you are interested in training the next generation of physicians, and it's something that you'd never thought could potentially be possible. Making sure your professors are human beings. They are there to help you. They are a resource for you, as well as they are people who could provide some resources. I think about, if you're having trouble in class, and the professor might be able to give you points on which are better ways to study to be able to retain the material, or if there are videos out there that you potentially could watch to get a better understanding of the material. It's an opportunity for you to also get a better understanding of the expectations of class and the materials. Perhaps you didn't really understand what was expected of the assignment, so it's an opportunity for you to ask to ensure that you're getting the best grade possible. And you also begin to develop those communication and interpersonal skills. The way you speak to a professor is definitely different than how you speak to a peer. To a professor, typically they want you to call them by their title, whether they're doctors or professors or whatever they would like for you to call them. But it's really, you're developing those skills early on. And as we all know, for medical school, you're going to need those recommendation letters. So it's an opportunity for you to connect with your professors so that they can get to know you a little bit better. So when that time comes of recommendation letters, they have a better idea of who you are as a person, not just the academics. And so what we wanted to do, we divided the in-class interactions versus office hours. So for in-class interactions, it's an opportunity for you to ask some of those questions that perhaps you don't understand of what's being discussed, or it's an opportunity for you to engage in the conversation. I think that oftentimes students shy away from asking questions because they may feel embarrassed, but more often than not, the person sitting right next to you may also have that same question. Also, the engagement that takes place in the classroom really enriches the learning environment, because the way you view things may be different than the way your peer views things, may be different than how the professor sees things. And so engaging in that conversation really allows you to understand the material. In many of the classes, oftentimes participation points are attached to your grade. And so don't be afraid. On the professor side, we like that engagement. We like to hear students ask questions. Your professors, as I said, they're experts in their discipline. So this is their passion. So anything in regards to this, things that they want to discuss with you. Another opportunity to talk to your professor is before and after class. I think the before and after class, they're really meant for short questions. If you get there early, it's nice to say, hey, how are you? Just a simple hello. Again, you know, they are human beings too, and they like those interactions with you. Really ensuring that it's short questions, because after class, for example, they may have to run to another class or another commitment. And so they don't necessarily want to be rude, but they have to get going. So again, keeping those things in mind and talking with them. Some of your classes, you may be in classes that are 20 people, but in other classes, it may be 400 people, right? So having, being able to talk to your professor is a good way for them to get to know you and for you to stand out. I'm going to pass it on to Cassidy here.
All right, everyone. So jumping into office hours, right? Nancy talked about those shy students in class, and there were some classes where I was very talkative and others where I was very quiet. And so office hours really helped me a lot when there were questions that I was nervous to ask in a big group setting, or even if I did ask, I had follow-ups, right? You can go into more detail one-on-one or in a group setting where others are likely going to have those same questions. So definitely join office hours to discuss those current class topics. It's also a really great space to ask for feedback on exams or papers, right? Each teacher is going to teach differently. They do have different grading styles and expectations. So going in and asking how to do better on a different exam or how to approach a paper in a way that will help you to be successful in that class is going to really help you. And definitely ask for study tips. Professors have been through this, right? They have semester after semester of working with students. So they've seen all of the different study techniques that have helped students to succeed. Another thing that I would say too is with study tips, if you go to office hours, especially during midterms or finals, you might get a glimpse into what's going to be on that test or what's going to be, really present in certain elements of an essay or how they're going to grade something. So it's just a way to set yourself up for success and to ask those questions. Definitely join these office hours to discuss your current grade. And my recommendation, so of course, do not wait until the end of the class to do this, just to make sure that you're successful. But outside of that, I, as a student, whether I was at community college or when I transferred, I was really intimidated by office hours because I didn't like the idea of going in and the possibility of me being one-on-one with a teacher. It just was very intimidating. And so this was a way I realized into my college career that I can go in early just to discuss my grade from the very beginning as a way to just introduce myself and have a dialogue. They know who I am. It gave me something to talk about. So that's another approach as well. And your professors are there to support you. And especially if it's someone that you feel you can trust, you do feel comfortable around them, please do not hesitate to go to them for personal problems that are impacting your academics or also you. I think college, there's a lot that can, there's a lot of transitions around college. There's a lot of pressures. College can at times be very isolating. And so your professors can be a resource for you. They know of resources on campus as well. I used to work when I was at a community college for the Proctoring and Accommodation Center. And a lot of the professors were so significant in helping our students to get extra time on test or successful resources to help them tackle testing anxiety. So definitely don't be afraid to ask for help or share what's going on. And keeping it simple, you could always go to office hours again, just to introduce yourself. It could be something in between classes as you're grabbing your coffee, swing by just to say hi for 1 to 2 minutes. And it can help them to just recognize who you are. They might remember your face and see you in class, right? It kind of builds that connection. And don't forget too of the benefits that it can have for you with your own professional development, right? You can go to them to ask about their academic journey or their career journey, get some insight into what their career experiences were, maybe recommendations on internships or how to just dip your toe into the water of different subjects. as well as the academic space. You know, what kind of a master's program might you want to try later down the line, or a PhD or a professional school? Learn about what all of those options are and what people, the different avenues that people have taken. And this is a big one too. If office hours do not work for you, please don't be afraid to tell your professor that and ask them if they can accommodate you. Many of us, we're working full time, right? We're in class and then we leave, or we have to take care of our family, or we're juggling all these different things. So a lot of times if office hours don't work for you, that doesn't mean that they're not for you. Reach out to the professor, ask if you can meet virtually, especially now, a lot of office hours are virtual anyways. So seeing if they can accommodate during a time when you are available. So definitely be sure to check your office or check your syllabus for the office hours too. Don't want you showing up to that office and it's a virtual meeting. All right, the next slide. And so with this slide, I want to talk about the approach of emailing. One of the recommendations would be to send from your school account. That's just to help them identify that it's a student. It won't get lost in the jumble of emails. And part of it is being strategic about it, right? Typically, we email our professors when it's during stressful times, we have a question, we want that response quickly. And so I would extend this outside of your professor too. If you're emailing the admissions office with a question, if you're emailing a counselor, definitely include as much detail as you can in that one email, right? That will limit the number of back and forth that you might get delaying that answer. So definitely include your full name and include your student ID. That'll help them to be able to identify you, get you what you need to know or what you need to process or submit. With a professor, identify the class that you're in. So Sociology 201, and address your professor like Nancy had mentioned. Dear professor, don't use hey or informal language. Part of that is just the dynamic between this expert in their field, right? But it's also good to get into that habit throughout college and for professional correspondence as well. Of course, if they ask you to call them by their first name, then do so, but start with professor. And do understand that you may not get an immediate response. There are some professors that I don't know how they do it, and they respond within 5 minutes. And it's amazing when you get a professor that's able to do that. But professors are juggling a lot. You don't know all that's on their plate, how many classes they're teaching, how many committees they're a part of. So don't take it as a personal a response if you don't hear back immediately, and definitely plan for it, right? If you need something in a timely response, understand you might not get that within 24, even 48 hours. So give yourself that bandwidth, especially if it's a time sensitive thing. And be sure to proofread. I know I've sent a lot of emails literally walking between classes from my phone, and you just don't want that autocorrect to say anything that you don't intend to say. So definitely proofread before you click send to send to the professors. And think before you send, right? Did you check the syllabus for the answer? Are you clearly articulating what your question is so that they can respond quickly and help you resolve the issue? And be sure as well to consider the tone of your email. It's much easier speaking in person after class when you can hear the tone, you can connect. You just want to make sure that your email is coming off respectfully. That will be good in any setting as well to keep in mind. Next slide. And so we wanted to include as well, especially with the dynamic of the professor, there is a shift when you become a transfer student, right? So at a community college, the class sizes tend to be smaller than when you transfer to a university. Generally speaking, if you go to a private school, that might not be the case, right? I can only speak from my experience. When I was at community college, I think that my biggest class, maybe I had 40. And then when I transferred to Davis, I think my biggest class was 300 or over. So it's very different dynamic in that classroom, right? They might not know you just because of that more intimate setting in community college. So with regard to classroom size, that's where going to office hours, trying to make those connections, greeting the professor at the beginning of class can come in handy. And what I will say too, when you have TAs, either at CSU or UC or wherever you transfer to, it's very beneficial to utilize them. They're a wonderful resource. I remember that's the only reason I got through some of my math courses was meeting with some of my TAs, but be sure to also create those relationships with a professor. When you apply, especially for medical school later down the line, or you can ask the postbac students here who applied to our postbac program, we want the letters of recommendation from the professor. So still put in the work to create that bond with that professional as well. And keep in mind too, the different backgrounds of your professors. So are they a practitioner or are they a researcher? Meaning, are they currently in the field? Are they working directly with patients? Can they tell you what the day-to-day looks like, and give you a glimpse of different career paths for you? Or are they really heavily involved in qualitative or quantitative research? What can you ask them? And so depending on your interests, kind of read the background on who your professors are, get to know them, and see what questions you might have as you're determining your next steps in your path. And statements or questions to avoid. Big recommendation to avoid: how can I get an A? I worked so hard, I deserved an A. Your class is too hard. I don't like the way that you teach. I can count on you to write me a letter of recommendation, right? And although these might not be ill-willed at all, right? They might be really just a general question that you're intending to ask, but we want to avoid questions that might imply that you're not interested in the class or in the material, everything that professor is putting into work for that semester. You might imply that you're, just connecting just really for that letter of recommendation and not out of interest for the material. You want to have that good impression and be able to create a good relationship and a good foundation. So definitely avoid questions or statements that might raise some red flags for the teachers. Excuse me, professors. And this is really the biggest thing of creating these bonds ultimately is later, you can use your strong connections with your professors for letters of recommendation and other professional development opportunities, right? But when asking for letters of recommendation, these are some of our recommendations when thinking who you want to write your letter. Think of someone who knows you well. So when someone writes a letter, it's also helpful that they write a letter where the person reading it can get a glimpse of who you are, right? They know your attributes. Maybe they've seen you engage with other classmates and they can say that you're personable, you have leadership skills. They can talk about your compassion, all of these different qualities that someone who wouldn't know you as well wouldn't be able to provide. Do you feel that you have a connection with this professor? I also think that this is really relevant for two reasons. One is for your own comfort, right? When you're coming to somebody and you're talking to them and you're asking them and sharing with them that you want a letter of recommendation, you want to make sure that that's as least stressful as it can be. And when it's with someone that you feel very comfortable around and you feel you have a connection with, that makes the process so wonderful, right? And they're so excited for you and they're invested in it. But then the other thing, when you have a strong connection with a professor, it implies, even if you don't realize it, but you'll be your more authentic self with them, right? You'll be more comfortable. And so they'll be able to know really who you are and speak to your character because they've gotten to know you so well. So definitely don't be afraid, right? That's where just getting the nerve or hitting send to go to office hours, those moments really do add up when you do make a connection with a professor. And this is a big one as well. Please don't feel that you have to ask a professor just because of their title. I think a lot of times I've gotten questions of, should I go with someone who has a prestigious title, although this person who doesn't have that prestigious title knows me much better. A strong, personable letter is much better than a templated letter or a letter that is very vague. And letter writers can only say so much, right? So ultimately, if you're applying to a program and someone is reading that letter of recommendation and they're not getting a lot of depth, it's hard for them to get anything out out of that. And that's really what we mean when we talk about a strong letter of recommendation. And it's important to ask for a strong letter of recommendation, but you also have a role to play in that when setting them up for success. So when you're connecting with a professor to ask for a letter of recommendation, provide them with the information that they need to know to help you to be successful ultimately, right? Provide them with your resume, provide them with what you're applying to or the mission of that organization, what your goals are. And you can even provide them with a few bullet points of just, here are some accomplishments that I'd like you to highlight in the letter if possible, right? So this can be something that after they've said that they can write that letter of recommendation, you can provide this information to them along with other details, right? Of when you'd like that letter submitted, when is the deadline, how much turnaround time do they have? So those are all important pieces to not only give you a strong letter of recommendation, but a letter of recommendation that is submitted on time as well, right? But the tricky element, and I do understand, is maintaining that relationship with a professor. And so for all of you listening right now, you have that opportunity to begin finding those professors that you want to connect with at your community college or later if you transfer. And definitely take advantage while you're on campus. If and when later, if you graduate, it is challenging to reconnect. It is. And you will be asked for those letters later down the line. You can ask all these post-bac students as well. I'm sure they'll have different stories. That is probably the number one question I get for people that are applying to our post-bac programs with the intent of applying to medical school is, I've been out of school for 2 years. I don't have a connection with a professor. What do I do? So my recommendation always is reach out and reintroduce yourself, right? Talk about wanting to connect over Zoom, have a coffee chat if you can. And it's about building those professional relationships. So definitely a way to avoid that big gap is sending update emails. So you can let them know when you graduate, let them know when you transfer, if you get a great job, if there was something that reminded you of their class, any opportunity to kind of make sure that you stay in their sphere, it'll make that process easier later down the line when you ask for that letter of recommendation.
I would just add one thing though, is I've written letters of recommendation, and when somebody tells you they can't write you a good one or they're not able to, don't push it, because it won't be a good one.
Trust your instincts. Yeah, if you get a response.
Yeah, and I think that's the difference between just asking for a recommendation letter and asking, do you think you would be able to write me a strong recommendation letter? So that way, you get the best out of it. And so we wanted to put in kind of like a plug for counselors and mentors. Definitely, please do not do this by yourself. Find your community. Community college, you want to make sure, or community college, or once you transfer, you want to continue that relationship with the academic advisor or the counselor to make sure you're on track, that you have your education or transfer plan set semester by semester, that you haven't missed any graduation requirements or transfer requirements. But another reason why to connect and keep in touch with your mentors and our academic advisors, counselors, is they may know about opportunities, for example, clinical or research opportunities. In the pandemic, it has been really hard to find those opportunities. I know I had students who reached out to me, and anytime I got any volunteering opportunities, especially with the vaccine clinics, I was making sure I was sending it out to those that had contacted me that they were looking for these opportunities, or that we had just had a chat and it reminded me, oh, this person wants to do this type of work. So definitely keep in touch, because you never know what opportunities are out there that they can potentially connect you with. There's also scholarship opportunities that they may have knowledge of that may not be sent out through the regular university or college portal. Or just get general advice, or when you're feeling like down, or you're feeling like, oh, this is taking too long, or there's too many roadblocks, like finding those that are supporting you is really important to keep you moving forward with your goal in becoming a physician.
And so just to wrap up our section before we hand it off to the postbacks, just remember, stop by to visit your professor during their office hours, review your syllabus for details, make sure that you show up on time, especially during the busy times of midterms and finals. Office hours can get really packed. So take the time earlier to do it, find designated time or go, be the early one. And then if you cannot meet your professor, remember, contact them to see if they have another time to meet. Please don't be too afraid to ask for that. This will be a key in helping you to be successful, and definitely know that you can advocate for yourself and ask those questions of your professors. And be sure to use your professor's appropriate title respectfully, and just acknowledging that office hours may be intimidating. But oftentimes professors are in their office hours and they don't have any expectations of just, you can come in and ask questions if you have just want to have a conversation. When I was working with different staff, I would have professors that would come over because they were so bored because no one had come to their office hours. So even if it's just to come by and chat with them, oftentimes they'll be really happy to talk with you. And the more you do it, the less intimidating it'll get. But you're not alone. It is hard, and just be sure to take that first step.
All right, so I'm gonna stop sharing and invite our student panel in. I really wanted to have our students join us just because, one, there is no one way of doing things and everybody has a different experience. And so my hope is that we can make it as humanistic possible, because I always think about my experience. I never attended office hours because I was so intimidated. And I remember one time I finally got the guts to go. I said, okay, I'm gonna go. And then I got scared, and then I just walked past his office hours and exited the building the other way. And so I feel that we think that, they are too busy to talk to us, but really, they really do want to help you. They really do want to support you so that you are successful in your journey. And so I want to open the panel by asking this question, and that is, if you can talk about some of your fears, anxieties in talking to your professor.
I can go and start with that, Nancy, if that's okay.
Yeah, go for it.
My initial fears, especially back in community college, was the fear that the professor would know, like, I'm just not that smart. And then my questions would be viewed as dumb or not logically based questions. But I found the complete opposite was just to ask genuine questions. And, like Cassie said earlier, people have the same question and maybe different versions of that, or a question that you might ask that somebody can think about that and comes up on the exam. So those questions that you ask, and especially talking to the professor, really come up crucially. So my biggest fear was just didn't think I was up to par. I just didn't think I was smart enough. But especially if you have a good professor, someone who wants to help their students, they'll quickly ease those fears and just ease those elements and make sure that you understand the material.
Anyone else wants to add to that?
Yeah, I'd like to say sometimes, like, it does take baby steps. You don't have to necessarily go in there and ask questions. Sometimes it just helps sitting in the room with the professor and listening to the other students ask questions. And maybe from there, you can like jump onto the question and add something, maybe explain if you want. And that like really, I think, shows the professor that you understand the material. And also to what Cassidy was saying, sometimes if office hours are very like full and you feel that you were not able to make a personal connection during office hours, during the quarter or semester, you can always email the professor and ask to set up a one-on-one after the class has ended, in case you want to ask for a letter of rec. So that's always an option too.
Anybody else?
Yeah, can I add to what Elizabeth said?
Yep.
So I like what you said, Elizabeth, about the baby steps. I think it's always that first question that's the hardest. And once you ask it, and you'll notice it's not that bad. And no one's gonna point fingers at you and start laughing at you because, excuse me, as Chris said, a lot of them will have the same questions. So it's always the first one that's hard, but then after that, excuse me, it gets better.
I can add on to that a little bit. I could say, Chris said the first question is probably the hardest, but I always try to keep in mind, you're there for a reason. You always got to remember your goal in the back of your head. Like, you're in college because you want to get to medical school, for example, for us. So just keep that in the back of your head and don't let what everybody else is thinking about. I mean, honestly, nobody cares. Only other students, you're probably never going to see them again. The person you care about is a professor. So just keep that in mind, focus, ask your question, get the conversation flowing, and you'll see as soon as you answer your question, everybody else around you is going to start asking more questions. And you just got to be brave enough to take that first step and then just keep going.
Anybody else?
Can I say something, Nancy?
Yeah.
So hi, everybody. I was just gonna say, I think like my biggest fear initially going to office hours was the fear that I'd like run out of things to like talk about. Because sometimes I didn't have questions, but I was like, oh, like I really like what they're teaching. I really appreciate them as a professor. And so I think part of that was just kind of going there, like kind of like what Cassidy mentioned earlier, just like what can I do to be the best student? Not necessarily to get the A, but just like to be the best student and to really show that appreciation for the opportunity to keep learning. And I think it really just comes down also to the fact that like there's like two factors, or I guess like two mutual languages that all human beings share, and that's like one of respect and authenticity. So like even if you can't necessarily like talk to them about like what mechanism and organic chemistry involved in this certain pathway for like lecture content, right? You can talk about how like, you're struggling, but this is what I do outside of it. And sometimes depending on what the dynamics of the office hour settings are, it really does like kind of help you stand out. And obviously just gauge it the first few times, kind of like what everybody has mentioned. It's like baby steps and just introducing yourself. But down the road, I was actually surprised by how many professors kind of resonated with that, because they're like, oh, that's not necessarily their interest, but they appreciate someone just talking about what they're passionate about. So, yeah.
Anything else? Yeah, go ahead, Diana.
Yeah, I could add something. Like one of my biggest fears is when going to office hours is the professor asking me more questions on top of my question and not knowing the answer to it. And that's happened to me twice this week, which is okay. I think the best way is to just be honest and be like, oh, I don't know. And I think, like Robert mentioned, like authenticity and just being honest really helps, because the professor will further explain their answer and also answer their own question.
All right, thank you. I'll move on to the next question. For those of you that have either taken classes at community college or are transfer students from a community college to a four-year, can you talk about the differences when going into office hours? Were you more intimidated, less intimidated? What are some of the things that you saw in differences?
I can go first on that one. So I was first at Long Beach City College, and like I think Cassidy said, the smallest size or biggest size, and in the class was about 40, and I can attend to that. It was about 40, and in office hours maybe about 10 or 8 people. And then after I transferred to Cal State Long Beach, CSU, that was a bit of a change, because now instead of only being 40, it was about 200 people in the course, and office hour was filled with about 20. And now that I'm in the postbac at a UC school, the class size is about 300, and office hours, although it's through Zoom, is about 50 to 60 people. So it does get a little intimidating when you have a lot of people, but just keep in mind, you're there for a reason. You gotta ask your question. and just start it, get your feet wet, get going, and you'll see the conversations just start flowing. And that's all you really need, is just get a conversation going, talk about other stuff. It doesn't have to be about school. Just get the professor to know you, and you know that.
Others?
Yeah, I could add on to what Ben said. So similar to the class size in between community college and UCs, the office hours in my experience were in the professor's actual office. So it gave more of like I would say a more personal connection. Whereas like here at UC, it's the office hours are in a lecture hall or some sort of classroom. So it's a little bit, it was a little bit more intimidating going into it, but I think the same principles apply where, get over that hump, that fear of asking the first question. Yeah, I mean, I personally found community college being more like a one-on-one thing. So it felt more of a safer place personally for me, but ultimately like professors are professors and they want to help you. So you just got to ask the question and have them help you out.
Others? I'm going to go to the question in the chat or in the Q&A. It says, in some cases, professors know students' intentions of going to office hours may just be to get recommendation letters later down the line. How did you make yourself stand out and make sure you didn't make that impression to your professor?
I think that for me is I tend to go to office hours for classes that I genuinely really enjoy, and professors that even when they're lecturing and they're not directly interacting with you, you feel some sort of like connection. You want to get to actually know them. And I think that going with the intention of wanting to get to know them and them getting to know you, instead of focusing so much on your letter of recommendation, I think that's when they see how genuine you are, and they'll go out of their way to talk to you and acknowledge you.
I like to add too. I think it's important in that aspect to like start attending office hours in the beginning and not like towards the middle or the end to ask that letter, but rather show that you are interested in their class and you start asking them questions about certain topics that you don't understand, that you need clarification on. And that way they see you as a student who is working hard, who is interested in all these other qualities that ultimately, that asking of letter recommendation is just like an addition rather than like the only thing that you're going to get out of office hours.
Yeah, I think Jessica and Alejandra said, like, they just hit the point on the head. Just like Alejandra said, if I find a class to be very, like the content to be very interesting and just piques my curiosity, especially if I can already tell the first day the professor, like, I'm gonna like her style, his or her style, automatically after class, I don't care how long the line is, especially at UCs, I'm gonna wait in line just to introduce myself and shake that professor's hand and say, "Hi, Professor or Dr. Whistler. My name's Chris. I'm really looking forward to this quarter." And that right there just sets the tone for the rest of the quarter or semester. And every professor understands that letters of recommendation are just part of the game. They're required for higher education. That's just, there's no two ifs about it. So for example, this last quarter, Dr. Whistler was his neurobio class, did their drugs, learned about all the drug mechanisms. And I was just enthralled with the content, and you ask questions, genuine questions, and you make eye contact with the professor, and then they get to know you by the end of the day. And by the end of the quarter, you go to office hours, and then you're the last one there, the first one there. Just make an effort, and they'll see that effort, and then that reflects in your exams. Because Cassidy and Nancy also allude to, like, not just having a vague letter. You want a letter that points to your individual traits that makes you stand out. So for me, I go based on authenticity, like Roberto said. So if I like the class, I like the professor, I'm gonna do everything I can to stand out, ask questions, and make myself known, and also do really well in the class as well. So that's very important. And just don't be scared. Don't be afraid. Just swallow that fear and shoot your shot, and promise you good things will happen.
Yeah, I'd like to add to that as well. I think it's great so far that everybody's been talking about going to office hours with the professor or a subject that you really like, but I would also suggest going to office hours for a class that maybe is not your best subject, or a professor that maybe you don't feel like you're connecting to very well, but just going there and trying really hard in the class and asking questions about things you're genuinely confused about, it will show that professor that like, hey, I'm really trying, like I'm being resilient, I'm persevering through this course, even though it's not my best subject. And then you and the professor can build some type of like repertoire back and forth with you asking for help, them helping you, them knowing your struggles early on in the class and seeing the grade you end up earning. And it will just kind of like, you'll stand out to them as someone who's been trying since the beginning. And then they can write you a letter of recommendation based on how hard you worked and how you never gave up in that course, and maybe how you came to love the course, in fact, or really get along with the professor. So that's something that I would recommend as well.
Yeah, very good. I think that there's definitely two things here. One is visiting your professor, asking questions, whether it's in class, because you really are struggling with the material, which is highly encouraged that you do those things. Don't shy away from those classes. And then there are instances where you are actually really connecting with the professor or the subject, where it naturally leads for you to ask them for a recommendation letter. Or like Mary said, it ends up being the opposite, right? You're going in there because you're really struggling with the material. But at the end, your growth is extremely evident from the beginning to the end of the quarter or semester. And that is definitely something that your professor could utilize to speak about you and your character, about not giving up. This person was attentive. This person came in, never gave up. And so it just adds that unique touch to your recommendation letter.
Can I add something, Nancy?
Mm-hmm.
This is more for community college that I noticed, and that is that some professors teach like series. So like you might have a professor over the span of a 3-course series or a 2-course series. So even if you have a rough start with like the first course of the series, but you enjoy the professor's teaching style, you have a chance to kind of redeem yourself the next semester or quarter. And that actually happened to me with one of my physics classes. And as a physics major, that was really the make or break point for me. The first semester I got a full disclosure, I got a C, but then the second semester I ended up getting the highest grade in the class. And that's because I changed my habits. I started asking questions to the professor, and he ended up writing me a letter for this postbac program. So just because you start rough doesn't mean you can end rough. You can always improve. And that's, it started with me asking the questions to the professor. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah, I had a professor that I went to his office hours, and I would ask him questions about like topics and things to review for the exam. And one section I asked, and his response was, "Well, don't worry about it. That's not going to be on the test." So it's kind of like that was like a freebie. Like I wasn't going to spend any time if that wasn't going to be not. And he said it's not that it's not important, but it's just we're not going to test on it. So I'm like, okay.
Yeah, that's something that I learned very later on, is attending those office hours also allows you to gain insight knowledge that you wouldn't have received in your classroom, in the class setting. We kind of mentioned it a little bit, but can we talk about things that you do perhaps in courses where there are 500 students? Is there anything that you do differently to, one, again, it's not just the recommendation letter, but really understanding the material. So any tips or things that you do in a big lecture hall?
If it's in person, I recommend sitting in the front and being consistent so the professor can see you and recognize you. And what else? Yeah, thanks.
Can I also add one more thing? If you're gonna sit, I teach EMT class. If you're gonna sit in the front, please don't. If you're that person, don't sit in the front and have your cell phone out the whole time and text, or also your laptop, because it's obvious when you're texting your friends, and so don't do that because that will take people off. It's distracting to the person that's speaking, but also it's very offensive. So
Anyone
Yeah,
else?
also, yeah, touching on like sitting at the front, uh, seconding what Elizabeth said, the professor kind of knows you. I remember last quarter I had a big class and I went to the professor's office hours and I introduced myself and she was like, "Oh yeah, I recognize you. You sit in like that little corner there." But also like sitting at the front kind of removes like the size of the classroom, if that makes sense, because everything's behind you. So you just focus on the lecture material. So that's like a little mental trick. If you are overwhelmed with like a big classroom, especially coming from community college, I recommend sitting at the front.
Yeah, also too, like sitting in the front. I mean, we all take very similar classes, so it was very obvious that like the first two rows are all like post-bac students. So it's pretty obvious. But yeah, sitting in the front just sets you up for success. At the same time, you're in a classroom of a stadium of like 500 people. The people that are going to sit in front are be most likely the people that want to study and want to do for study groups. And also just keep raising your hand too. Professors are going to ask questions, and the majority of people aren't going to want to raise their hand because they're too scared. But you raising your hand just it's like a second form of study, and it's like reinforce that material. So participate, and then in such a big classroom in the UCs or Cal States, the people in the front are the people that are going to be want to study and do form study groups, and that's just another way to reinforce the material.
Can I add on to that, Nancy? So yeah, sitting in front of the classroom is a big game changer. Like my fellow friends mentioned earlier, that I used to not sit in the front like during undergrad, but now going to the post-bac program, I started to. And it definitely, I contribute that a lot to, doing really well in my classes. And I just would recommend you to do the same. And you'll notice it's a big difference. And also it makes it easier to ask questions. If you sit like in the back of a 500 student classroom, it's very hard for the professor to see you that you're raising your hand and you have a question, but rather if you sit in the front, they will immediately see you. Yeah.
I can add a little bit more on that. It's great to sit in the front, and also don't be afraid to raise your hand and ask the question when the professor says, "Okay, we just covered this topic. Does anybody have any questions?" And then nobody answers or raises their hand. You got to be like, "Yep, right here, front row. Hey, answer my question." That'll lead on to a discussion, but the important part is they see you and they know that you're asking questions, that you're actively participating in class. That way, when you go to office, I'll be like, "Oh, hey, you asked me that question. Do you have any other questions following on to that? Or did you understand the topic now? Can you teach it back to me?" Great. That's all that matters. Just answer the question, raise your hand, be active in the class.
Anyone else?
I can add on to that a little bit. So I was just going to say, like, being active in the class can also be like you helping out someone that's like sitting next to you if they have like a question or they're not understanding something. Because professors are a lot more observant, even if it is a class of like 500, especially if you're sitting near the front, than we might like initially think. So stuff like that, like professors notice that. So try to just, be as collaborative as possible. And also like when you're participating in class, be cognizant of the fact that like if you take space, also make space for other people to participate. Because then like a professor will always want every student to participate ideally. So just kind of also allow room for that. Because then that'll also kind of be like, oh, okay, this person like wants like a discussion. They want, like everybody to learn.
I want to add to I think a few mentioned, but when you can make a connection with someone that you're sitting next to in class, either for like studying or form a study group, That's really helpful, especially on the days if you happen to be out sick or you don't make it to class, you have someone that you know can share notes with you or give you insight into what you missed. So it's helpful if you don't have, your, a program or people that you know in the class, if there's someone that you sit next to or close by each day, exchanging phone numbers and just asking just for the class and support.
And then I think, would you, someone?
No,
was
I
gonna
just have a
say-
question. What
Yeah.
about the big classes that you have graduate students or that they lead the discussion? How do you interact with that? And what is the difference between, this is certainly at the UC, a graduate student and a professor?
Great question. Who wants to chime in?
So I don't know if I ever had a class that was led by a graduate student, but I would just assume the same principles apply. If he's running that class and he enjoys his teaching style and the content, then same groundwork. Introduce yourself and say look forward to this quarter and just ask genuine questions. Sit in the front of the class, and this is like referring to like letters of rec. This is office hours, and especially being a graduate student so young or younger, they're gonna have just as much energy as you. So I'm sure you'll get that back and probably make the dynamic a little bit easier, especially in office hours. And besides, they just came from your previous level too, but being an undergrad, now they're a graduate student. So they can definitely relate to you on a similar level as well. And just ask questions and then see where it goes from there. And if there's a general relationship and interest, then you can ask for a letter of rec and hopefully get that accomplished.
Like Chris said, it's very rare. I never had a class where the graduate student it's leading the whole class or the whole quarter or semester. I know that is a fear that you may all have, that once you go to a UC or a CSU, that you're not going to have a professor, that you're going to have a TA doing the lectures, but that's very rare. Sometimes towards the end, a lot of my classes will have one of the TAs or all the TAs do one lecture each, but no more than that. Usually you interact with the TAs when it's a big class, like 300 people, and they're the ones leading discussion, or they'll have their own office hours. But it's really rare that you will have the TAs doing the lectures on the daily basis. But like Chris said, the interaction will be the same. You still have to treat them with respect.
You want to?
Yeah, I want to add something. I think for me, I've only ever experienced, I guess, graduate students in my labs as the lab aide or the individual that's like in charge of the lab. And just like similar to what Chris said, like you treat them with respect, but also I think it's actually a great way to really break the ice and learn to interact with professionals, because again, they are like teaching you on how to pretty much just handle products inside the lab. And that's like really your opportunity to get to talk to them. And also these lab TAs, they do talk to the professors. And so if you do ever like end up asking the professor for a letter of rec, you never know whether or not they'll ask the TA about you.
Sometimes I've seen on letters of recommendation that both the TA and the professor sign it as well. So they work together on a letter of recommendation.
Chance, I'd like to ask you a question. You attended a private university. How was your interactions with professors? What was that like?
Yeah, I went to Santa Clara University. Honestly, my undergrad experience, I probably am not the best person to ask for, because I don't think I took advantage of my undergrad experience the way I should have. I was an athlete, so I spent a lot of the times that I spent there was either at practice or at the athletic center where they had like specific tutors just for us. But the good thing about going to Santa Clara was that classes were a lot smaller. So I do remember that. Like I had all of my classes were a lot fewer students in there. So similar to probably like how it was when I went to community college after I graduated. Much different than what I'm seeing here now at the UC. Now I'm at a UC. This is definitely the biggest class size I've ever been in. So it's easier to get lost. But like everybody in the cohort has been saying, as long as you're paying attention, you're sitting at the front, you're being proactive, and you're advocating for yourself, then you shouldn't have any issues. But yeah, that's.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. And I think it is good practice, right? Because once you get into medical school, you're going to want to have those interactions with the faculty members that are teaching. And it goes back to like knowing their journey, their passions, the work that they do as it relates to not just being a physician, but research, teaching, etc. So I think it's really good practice to gain those skills now, so you feel a little bit more comfortable once you do get to medical school. I think to end, I don't know if anybody else has any more questions to ask. So then I'd like to end with just any tips and overall advice, I think in talking to your professor or just kind of going through this pre-med journey. Any advice that you may want to share with those others that are just beginning? You guys are already done with your bachelor's. You're on your way to applying to medical school. But a lot of our participants are just beginning their academic journey. Anything that you would have changed had you know what you know now?
I can start. I know I just talked, but I can do this real quickly.
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing that Ms. Galindo talked a little bit about when she was presenting is always make sure that you have blinders on. Don't look to the side. This is a long, long, long journey. I'm almost a decade removed from when I graduated from Santa Clara. I'm 31 years old and I'm just now in the post-bac. But this is my journey, right? This is Chance's journey. It's not going to be the same as some of my cohort members. It's not going to be the same as you guys when you guys get here. Just take your time. Be okay with it taking a long time. If this is what you want to do, if you want to be a physician or any other allied healthcare worker, then be okay with it taking as long as it's going to take. And be okay with making mistakes and letting there be bumps on the road, because trust me, if we had another 2 hours, I wouldn't even be able to fill it with all the mistakes I've made. But like, look at me now, like I'm here. I finally arrived. I'm in the post-bac at UC Davis School of Medicine. If you had told me 5 years ago that I would have been here, I would have laughed at you. So stay committed, be happy that you're getting this information now, and, and take advantage of, Ms. K's, Ms. Galindo. I don't know if you guys are connected with them, but take advantage of all the resources you have. If you need our information, don't hesitate to reach out to us. I know all the cohort members would be happy to talk to any of you guys. And just remain patient. You guys are going to get there. I know it seems like it's forever away right now, but trust me, I won't be applying to medical school until I'm 32. Hopefully I'll start medical school as a 33-year-old, and I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. So.
Great words. Thank you, Chance.
Yeah, I have to just follow Chance on that because we're both in the same boat. He's 31. I'm also 32. So we're the old heads in the cohort, if you want to say that. And if you look back at the diagram at the beginning of Nancy's presentation, all those twists and turns from point A to point B, I had like 10 more twists and turns, and that's my story. So I was in community college for about 6 years, and I remember, like I was yesterday, like being in your guys' boats, but you guys being here right now is like the first step in like in many steps. And you learn like a lot of cliches are very true. Like a journey of 1,000 steps begins with the first step. And I didn't know what I wanted to do in my life, and I was doing different things in community college. And then I found my passion and decided, become a doctor. And that took me like another couple more years, and then trying to get classes. And like Chance said, if you told me that I was gonna be, in med school, like in this position, like 5 years ago, I would have like laughed at you because it just didn't seem probable, and it took such a long time. But no matter what you do now, 5, 10 years, that time's gonna come. So do something that you care about, because that 5 and 10 years are going to come no matter what you do. So me and Chance and everybody else here and the student panel, we're all knocking on the door of medical school, making our dream come true. So be patient. Know that it takes time, it takes work, and you're gonna make a lot of mistakes, but through those mistakes, you're gonna grow. And I'm just telling you now, because I know what it feels like. Just getting community college would seem like didn't seem possible, but I got into a really good 4-year university at San Diego. Still struggled, I still learned, but I grew, and I am who I am today, and I wouldn't have changed a thing. And I think I had to go through this to just deserve this and be who I am, just ready to apply for med school. And I'll put my email in the chat. You guys have any questions, please don't hesitate. I'll love to give back what I've learned, because it's a lot of information. So just keep grinding, and I promise you'll get there.
Thank you, Chris.
I'd like to add on, like, it's very real. It's crazy to think back to where I was when I started community college in 2011 and being here now. But one thing that rang true for me was, if this is, your dreams of being a doctor or any career path that you choose to take, if that's really what you want to do, then it's not up for debate. You're going to stumble, you're going to trip over, but you can still get up, you can still keep going. So yeah, stay true to that. And as far as advice for community college students, I think one thing I would have done more was more engagement with the transfer center. Usually community colleges have little departments separate from the general counseling department, specifically for transfer students or people who are aspiring to transfer. And they'll tell you everything about linkage agreements and any field trips that are going on, any events, any fairs, and they're there to help you. So take advantage of that, soak it all in, because you're going to blink and then you're going to be where you were meant to be the whole time. So enjoy the journey. Don't try to keep up with the Joneses, and just have fun and work hard.
Going to college is like a really huge transition for anyone, especially for students who doesn't have the resources, or it's the first one in their family to go. So I struggled throughout undergrad. I always questioned myself, how can I do better? And I didn't even get into third year, so still got time. But one of the things that I learned, what advice, one of the things I think that really helped me was that I went mentors, and one of the things he told me was that
You're breaking out a little bit.
Yes, hear me?
It might be your pen.
I don't. Is it better now?
No, it still breaks up. Oh.
It's in the chat.
Okay, so that's good. Thank you, Jer. He's gonna put it in the chat.
I put my email on the chat as well. Please reach out. I think that a lot of times it's very overwhelming to know what classes you have to take and what the next step is. And most of us don't have someone to ask, like in our family. So I think that even just getting that guidance makes a big difference, because sometimes I've seen it happen many times where you think you're taking the right classes to get you to the next step, and then you realize 2 years later that that's not what you're supposed to be doing. And it's fine taking your time, but since you're taking those classes, might as well invest it the right way to begin with. So please reach out and don't hesitate to ask for help, or any other if you want to talk or get any advice.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Yeah, I also included my email in the chat just in case anyone wants to reach out. And I also just wanted to say, going into these courses, a lot of the classes, don't think any class is too hard for you to complete. And that's not saying that the class won't be a difficult class or you won't have to work hard, but you can do it. I remember when I first started, I did take some classes at community college, but even at university, they were talking about organic chemistry and this physics. And I was just like, oh my goodness, there's no way I can pass these classes and taking them all simultaneously. Like there's no way I can do it. But I got through, I went to the classes, I had to work hard. I tried to go to office hours, but you can do it and you will make it. And like everyone else has been saying, don't compare your journey to anyone else's, just kind of focus on yourself and take whatever steps you want and you feel are necessary for you to succeed. And you are capable of making it as far as you want. You just have to really work hard and use the resources around you. Really, really use your resources, as many of them as you can, whichever ones are afforded to you. That's one thing I wish I could go back and fix, but not really, because then I wouldn't be here. So yeah, just use whatever resources you have available to you.
I have one last thing, if that's okay, Nancy, just really quick. Also, too, so it's really like not what you know is who you know too. So that's something you'll learn too, is networking. That's a huge thing. And so if someone like is offering their mentorship and you feel like you can make that work, take that opportunity, because you never know. Like if one of you guys connect to somebody here in this panel, by the time you guys are planning med school, we'll be like 3rd, 4th years, or who knows where you are in your journey. And medical students also sit on admission boards and they do interviews, and they'll either give you that recommendation or not. So like that's like far from now, but I'm just saying, like, networking really does get you a job, get you placement, and get you into a program. So really just take your studies seriously, and also understand that networking is also very important into this journey as well. So take every opportunity you can possibly take and see what happens. But good luck. I really wish you guys the best of luck.
Nancy, could I just add one more thing? I just want to say, like, in terms of like with letter writers and everything, also remember that you're kind of interviewing them. It's kind of like more specific to that, but just, don't be intimidated by professors, especially like when, if it's not like in a small classroom setting, but like a larger one. Just try to talk to them and remember that, they're human beings as well. I also would encourage everyone, like Mary mentioned, like take advantage of your resources. And I think the most valuable one is like finding community early on. I feel like that's what kind of distinguishes this program, and why I've been fortunate enough to be successful in it so far. So just find community early on.
Anybody else?
Yeah, Nancy, I actually want to add something.
Yeah.
Robert mentioned community, and us as a cohort, I would say we're pretty tight-knit community. But not just that, finding a community that you enjoy, whether it's doing art or watching movies. I would say it's important to find that community so that you can find an outlet at the end of the day too, because again, this is a rough and long journey, and you wouldn't want to do it on your own. It's much more fun and exciting when you are able to do it with people who enjoy the same things as you.
Thank you. All right, so if nobody else has anything else to say, just thank you so much all for being here with us tonight. We really appreciate you very much. I see you, Christy. Glad that you're here. Thank you all very much and have a good night.